Dear Premies, respected Baiji, and all the seekers of truth that have gathered here. This journey has been continuing for many days for me, where with the grace of Guru Maharaj Ji, I have the opportunity to travel once again from India and take the message of our Guru Maharaj Ji, the message of knowing oneself, and take this message to different countries, to people who speak different languages, believe in different cultures, have different belief systems. But all throughout my journeys, I have begun to see that there are no differences other than the differences that we create due to our misunderstandings. Someone very wise said, the only reason that we do not understand another person is that we do not make a correct effort to know that person. Today we do see the world divided on many fronts. Religiously, people are fighting amongst each other. Socially, people are fighting amongst each other. There's a great economic divide between the rich and the poor, the educated and the uneducated. But behind all these divisions, behind all these screens that we've put up, at the end of the day, a human being lives through the power of the Spirit. And any great change in our life, whether we speak a particular language or not, whether we belong to a particular culture or not, any great change in any human being's lives stems from his understanding of himself in deeper ways. And that understanding is brought through other people's examples that touch our spirit. There's a very beautiful story of a person I got to know just before traveling. And this person was a very great American journalist. In the early 1980s. And sort of he was very popular on the American TV channel. And one day he was diagnosed with cancer. So that time this disease was not known to the world like it is known today. A lot of research, what we have today and the medicines that we have today or the therapies that we have today did not exist at that point of time. But people did know that it is a very fatal disease. So, a lot of people were grieving for him. And the TV channel that he worked for sort of created a program that would be his last program that would be aired. But instead of him taking other people's interviews, someone else would take his interview. So the program was aired, and the person interviewing this senior journalist, this news presenter, kept on emphasizing on this one point, that you have this disease, you are going to die. How do you feel? Are you afraid? The people of America, wants to know, what is going on inside of you. So generally a person would think that a person facing such a dilemma in life will obviously be full of fear and he'll be afraid. But this person, because he had come to terms with what was happening to him, instead of being trapped in fear, he was actually set free from that insecurity and fear. And he just summed up the interview by saying a very beautiful thing. He said, I know that I'm going to die one day, but so are you. And he turned the question on the presenter in such a way that the presenter, the person who's asking him questions, was also shocked. I mean, we know someone is going to leave this world because the doctor tells us. But in that knowing, we forget that one day we too also have to leave this world. We are not here forever. So that other person's dilemma and my dilemma is not different. It's just that the other person has come to the term that one day he will leave, and he is not afraid of that journey. He is content, and he's lived a fulfilled life, and in turn, living a fulfilled life has set him free from the fear of, the life coming to an end. Now, isn't this our greatest insecurity? Everyone. What propels our fear in life? That what I have today will not be there tomorrow. That is the fear. Someone is afraid he's going to lose his family. Someone is afraid he's going to lose his job. Someone is afraid if he doesn't struggle hard enough, all the possessions he has will go away. So whatever we value in this world, there is an attachment to it. And through that attachment, if the mind does not understand the place of all things in this world, including ourselves in this world, then what happens? These attachments give rise to insecurities and fear. Because when you attach to one thing, then only you will have the fear of losing it one day. But the attachment is what? And this is where spiritual insights come in. See, many people like to think that, having a scientific background or being a man of science, you have exact knowledge of things. But if you see the history of science and scientists and what science has also given us, is always changing. At one point, the whole world believed that the earth is the center of our solar system. Till one scientist, through his telescope, Galileo, looked in the skies and he saw the movements of the planets, movement of the earth, and he began to realize that maybe earth is not stationary. Because we see movements in the sky, maybe it is the sun that is stationary. And just for proposing this thought, he was put under house arrest because he said something that was contrary to the world's belief. But slowly, as the instruments of science became finer and finer, the insight of science increased in understanding the universe. What happened? Today, you open any book on science or any book on the universe, the picture of the solar system depicts that the sun is the center of our solar system and all the planets, including Earth, are revolving around it. So today, the belief has completely changed. At one point, the world believed, the civilized world believed that the Earth is flat. Till one person, Columbus, set out on his ship, and he didn't set out to disprove anyone. He just set out to understand what is the unknown, because no one had ventured that far, and when he ventured out into the unknown, he conquered his fear. 3 ships reached what you know as the New World, which he found, he landed in the islands of West Indies. And then the New World of America and South America was found. And then automatically the people started circumnavigating the world and realized that the world is not flat. So scientific discoveries through insights also change. At one time we might believe it to be the complete truth, but as our insights increase, we begin to discard what is not real, and a new truth and a new insight appears that leads our spirit forward, leads our understanding forward. So in the same way, our sages, instead of being extrovert, our spiritual scientists, instead of being extrovert, instead of making the journey in the outside world, they also understood the significance of the inside world of an individual. That there are certain influences that guide us, that influence us. If the weather is too hot, we will be in discomfort. If the weather gets too cold, we would be in discomfort. But then there are examples where an individual, if his mind is in his control, these little changes in the external world does not affect the internal self. How does that happen? The simplest example I give to people in understanding the power of the internal spirit is what? You get up every morning, the world is very beautiful. I mean, out of the 7 days I've been in London, there was great sunshine at yesterday's program. And when I got up today and opened the windows today, and I was pleasantly surprised, I was questioning myself whether I'm in Delhi or I'm in London, because there was such bright sun for such a long time. So it's a sunny day, it's a beautiful day. We all step out of our homes. And because it's bright and sunny, we are in a very cheerful mood. You slowly make your way towards this program. And because it's Sunday and the sun is out, everyone is out on the streets, everyone is enjoying this beautiful day. And because everyone wants to enjoy it, for sure there can be certain places where, the traffic can cause a certain commotion. There could be traffic jams. Now you set out on your journey thinking you will be here in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you have some important place to be in. And that journey has taken you double the amount of time or triple the amount of time. Now what is happening? Slowly, you are sitting, the day was beautiful, you were smiling when you got up. But because you haven't reached your destination and you are stuck in a traffic jam, your internal self begins to change. The day is still beautiful, the sun is still out, people are still, walking on the streets, smiling and laughing. But you are not seeing all that. The beauty of the world fades away. Why? Because your internal self starts to change. You slowly start to get irritated. Slowly, time passes by. There is no check to your irritation. Slowly, you'll start to get angry. There is no check to your anger. And the next thing you know, it is not a beautiful day anymore, but the sun is still shining. So, what are the influences of the internal self? This is what science left out in its discoveries. And this is where our sages, our Vedic scientists stepped forward, and they took the mantle of understanding the internal realms of man, understanding the influences of the mind on the self. So our sages understood that understanding the internal self is also important. And that led to understanding of spirituality. Spirituality doesn't have to do with, like very beautifully said, that it is not talking about religion. Religion talks about our understanding of the universal being according to our own understanding. All religions, if you see, were not born at the same time. They were born out of the understanding of a man that was living in very different conditions and circumstances. If the Torah was written, it was written 7,000 years ago. 7,000 years ago, the way the societies lived, the way the laws of the societies were very different. The understanding, the expansion of consciousness had not happened. People were still trapped in very tribalistic laws. And according to their own understanding at that time, when they asked the question, is there a divine spirit? How do we understand that? So communities, defined the universal understanding in a particular way. That became the book of the Torah. Slowly, as consciousness expanded, as societies became more and more involved, then what started happening? Then a new religion had to address the problem of that greater society. So you see, the reason why different religions exist is that at one point, a particular religion failed to answer certain questions of the people around them. And that is why, again and again, you see after few thousands of years, there is the birth of a new religion. Gautam Buddha came 2,500 years ago. The Lord Jesus Christ came 2,000 years ago. Muhammad Sahib came 1,600 years ago. We call our Vedic knowledge or Sanatan Dharma to be more than 10,000 years ago. But before even the Vedic society existed, there would have been other prehistoric societies existing that we do not know of. There are excavations done in Peru where they are now tracing civilizations in their country which are more than 15,000 years ago. They have no clue about that civilization, but they have found ancient sites. They are now studying how they lived, how they worshipped, what was their social structure, all based on what they have excavated. So 15,000 years ago, man was living and man was asking this fundamental question that this world exists, but how does this world exist? Why does this world exist? And today, man is fundamentally asking the same question. But obviously, the way we answer or try to see the question is very different. Because today, with the means of technology, we are empowered by this information age. You have a mobile phone. If I'm saying something and you do not agree with me, there is always Google to answer or ask. And it's very easy. If I say something and I fumble in something, you can go on Google and you can also check me. So suddenly, a prehistoric man did not know anything besides what? Besides when the rains would come, when he should sow his seed, and when he should plant his crop so that he can have a good harvest. And for the winter season, he should store enough food so his family can survive the winter. This was a man's need, or the need to understand nature around him, was only limited to these needs. Suddenly you have man today with infinite wants and desires. Each individual wants to see the world, he wants to travel the world, and you can do that. Sitting in your home, through the miracle of internet, you can travel the world. You can know things about the world, about different cultures that prehistoric man couldn't even dream of. So in this day and age, when each individual is empowered with so much of knowledge, the knowledge has to be put off in correct use. That is where spirituality comes in. It teaches us that there is the right time and there's the right place of knowledge to manifest. Now, how do I manifest knowledge or wisdom within myself? Because see, it's very simple. Many people have this notion that God is infinite. And how can a finite being understand infinity? That is a very good question. If we are limited beings in our senses, we are limited beings in our understanding, and God is encompassing all, everything that is known to man or is even not known to us today is encompassed in the vision of God. Now, to understand this vision also, how can a finite being understand what is infinity? The question our sages say is very simple. जो पिंड में है वही ब्रह्मांड में है. Our sages understood that all things stem out of a vibration. And God itself is said to be the primordial vibration. Meaning, if this world exists, if duality exists, there has to be a vibration that is creating the two. If the world was singular and there was no other, then the world does not need to be defined. The world does not need to be given definitions. But the moment you say this is good, this is bad, the moment you say this is right, this is wrong, this is yours, this is mine, these are definitions that we give to the world. But why are we giving the definition? Because duality is existing. Because there are multiple choices that you can take. And because of those multiple choices, multiple understandings, the world is divided. So our sages understood that to understand that though this world seems to be divided, but there is something that is connecting all. And that they understood as the Jeev Atma, as the consciousness within you. And that consciousness within you is the link to the consciousness that is out there, which is manifesting in all. So once you understand that you are also a part of that greater vibration, then slowly, through understanding of that self, our consciousness rises. The vibration or the expansion of consciousness happens in a being. And when you resonate with a particular frequency, with a higher frequency, then you become part of that higher frequency. Our sages have simply tried to put it in simple ways. They give simple examples because they understood that everyone cannot be a man of science. Everyone in this world cannot be a man of practicality. That sometimes you need simple ways of making everyone understand very complicated things. If Einstein spoke, it's not that everyone understands what Einstein spoke. But if you use pictorial ways or simple ways of making people understand what scientific truths are or what Vedic truths are, then pictures, small stories also become very powerful tools of empowerment. So our sages simply said what? That if a river flows into the sea, the reason it becomes a part of the sea is because it surrenders itself to the sea. Now a scientist will say what? That the atoms and the molecules are basically water. H2O is present in the river and H2O is also present in the sea. Hence there is no difference between them. So when they will merge, they will become one. That is the scientific way of explaining it. But our sages said that put this example of the river flowing into the sea into your life. There is the greater ocean of consciousness, where all forms or variations of consciousness, inanimate or animate, that great sea of vibration where all things have come from. And we are also a river. Each individual being is like a stream or a river flowing back to its origin. But when will the union happen? When will you understand that you are part of that greater cosmos? When you surrender. What do you surrender? You surrender your ignorance. You surrender your hesitation. And once you do that, then what happens? Then your resonance and the Almighty's resonance is one. So they said that when in Tattva you become one, there is no separation, there is no segregation. So science has its own way of defining certain truths of life. And our Vedic scientists, our spiritual scientists have their own way of understanding the truth. But life predominantly has to move forward. It cannot move backwards. As beings of consciousness, as beings of intelligence, when we have this life, we have this opportunity. We have a wonderful mind filled with infinite possibilities. Then certain changes that are happening in our life should be for the positive, should be moving forward. It should not be for the negative. Meaning how? Small example to understand what positive change means in life. So a person gets married and he stores his wife's name as how? So the first year his wife is calling him, the phone will read, my life. The second year the wife calls him, the phone will read, my wife. So from life, the word has been changed, slight change, not a very great change. He's still saying my wife. And then the third year, when the phone is ringing, it will only say, instead of my wife, it will say home. Home calling. Just a simple change, nothing too great. Then probably 5 years after marriage, there will be another name put instead of the wife's name. I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not. I still have to reach the 5-year mark. But what someone told me was after 5 years, it won't be surprising if the wife has written Hitler instead of my life and my wife or home and just Hitler. And then at 10 years down the line, if the wife is calling home, what has the husband done? He's written wrong number instead of my wife, my life, everything. So saying that, what is change? Now, if I am changing for the negative, then as a conscious being, as a being of infinite potential that human beings are, someone very beautifully said that within each individual lies infinity. Why? Because in a moment's choice, you can be a saint. In a moment's choice, you can be a sinner. So the journey from a sinner to a saint or a saint to a sinner, all the infinite possibilities or the length of the journey or the experiences that will make this change fundamentally lie within you. But if you recognize that, if you see that, then the change is there. And if we do not see anything, if we do not make an effort, then what? Life is what it is. It is many people define it as suffering. Many philosophical people have said that life is nothing but suffering. Because you are born into this world, you will die. You will meet someone, you will be separated from someone. You will build your house with love, one day it will be destroyed. So everything will move towards suffering. But if this is the goal of life, why has the Creator created this infinite universe? Today, if you even speak to a scientist who knows a little bit about the universe and just ask him the question, how big the universe is, there is no figure that can be put. Why? Because our universe, according to science, is still expanding. There are galaxies out there, solar systems out there that we have not seen because their light has not reached our planet. There are lights of stars that are reaching our planet, but they are so far apart that the light has just reached us, so we are seeing them. But in reality, those stars have ceased to be. They have died. They have exploded in a supernova, and that light has not reached us, so we are still seeing the star, tingling in the sky. So many stars that we'll see in the night skies do not exist. That's how vast this universe is. And in this vastness of space, we have our little planet called Earth. And within this little planet, there is this amazing change happening. All the forces of nature have worked to create this atmosphere in which life can sustain itself. And slowly, life has evolved into what? Sadly, into us, a human being. And a human being with consciousness which discards life. That is the sad part. That in this world where thousands and thousands of years of creation, of nature's effect is, or effort is, a human being. And human being today is in minutes destroying what Mother Nature has created out of thousands and thousands of years of effort and love and creation put into it. So that's why I say it is sad that it's turned into us. Why? Because consciously we have moved forward, for sure. Man was living in caves. Today we are living in high-rise buildings. Tomorrow we'll live probably on the moon or another planet. It's a possibility. People have already started living in International Space Station. Recently I read the papers where one of the astronauts from your country has only returned after spending so much time in the space. So these explorations of science as technology has taken us way beyond our wildest dreams. But internally what is happening? Man was suffering when Jesus was alive. Man was suffering when Buddha was alive. Man was suffering when Abraham walked this world. And today, with all our science and technology, in some way or the other, we all are suffering. We all are questioning. We all are wondering when will be the end to our suffering. So our sages understood that there has to be a balance in our life. And that is what Buddha said is the middle fold path. Understand your worldly duties, but also do not forget your spiritual duties. As a being of consciousness, as your being of spirit, what is important for us to move forward? I am born into this world. I know about myself. I have a name, I have a place, I have a definition that I like to give myself, where I live, what I do, what I eat, what I like, what I don't like. And I have infinite definitions. My favorite color, my favorite food, my favorite fruit. But all these things will not tell me whether you're a good human being or not. You can have a favorite color, you can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can be a lawyer, and you probably would be the best lawyer in this world. But your business card does not tell me whether you're an honest person or not. For that, I need your experience. I need to share this time, this life with you to able to understand what your internal psyche is. And it takes a lifetime to understand another person. And it will take a lifetime to understand ourselves. But the point of beginning, the point of origin starts from within you. And that is what our sages try to explain. That understanding yourself is being spiritual. It is not understanding the world and the religions around us. Start from yourself. Start from the origin of consciousness, which is you. And once you start from there, then you can move forward. Now the important thing is, okay, now I know where do I have to look. This is clear that I have to look within myself. Now the question is how and when. These are also important questions. When do I start this change? So someone very beautifully put it. He's like, make all the changes in your life before you get married. Because after you get married, you can't even change the TV channel. It happens to all of us. So what is the right time? Now you can argue, you can be a very intelligent person and you can be a person of perfect planning that, okay, at this time and at this date, and I'll go and seek God. But it is also arrogance of the self, Someone very beautifully put it. He's like, we are so arrogant fools in so many ways that we make so many plans for tomorrow. The simple arrogance that we have is, everyone sets an alarm when they want to get up tomorrow, don't we? I mean, if someone has a flight to catch, we'll set an alarm. If we have work to get to, we'll set an alarm. Just in case we don't get up, the alarm will wake us up. So everyone is setting an alarm. But is there a guarantee that you will get up tomorrow? Do you have a guarantee? Has God written, we all know our manufacturing date, but does anyone in this world know when he's going to leave this world? No. And in medical science also, there have been miracles in so many ways. I've just come in from South Africa, and a lot of preemies over there are studying medical science. And there's a doctor, Dr. Shameen, and she was telling me, she's like, I have witnessed myself personally. There have been patients that have come to me which have been given 6 months to live. You know, that you have this disease, you will only live for 6 months. We only tell them, live your life, whatever is remaining, with positivity. She's like, I have a patient who has defied all medical knowledge, and she's still living 8 years with the disease that she has, where medical science gave her only 6 months. And I have also seen patients who have been given a lot of time to live, but because they are not positive in their mind, you know, they are afraid of what's going to happen. They're always filled with negative thought. They're always thinking about their disease, not thinking about living, that they leave this world before their time is there. So what is this? If everything is only governed by set principles of science, then there are people who are defying that, you know, in their daily lives, and they're living examples of that people that are there. So one has to understand the power of the mind and to utilize it correctly. You know, you have a mind which is filled with infinite potential. But if you don't channelize this energy, then what happens? Wisdom of life cannot be understood. And channelizing of the energy is what? Meditation. When we were all small, you know, they were not that in school you would be allowed to take all the toys that you have at home. So people would make simple games to play around, you know, in boarding schools and schools. One of the easiest way of troubling another person was taking a magnifying glass, and when he's not looking, sort of trying to burn his clothes, or, you know, trying to burn his leg. You know, people would play these pranks on each other. So what do you do with a magnifying glass? You concentrate the rays of the sun to a particular point. Now the sun rays are all around us, but do they harm us? You know, we are standing out. I mean, everyone loves to be out in the sun when the sun comes out. You know, does it harm us? It doesn't. But suddenly you take this glass, which has the ability to concentrate the ray to a point, and the moment you make that point as small as possible, that sun ray itself has the potential to burn you, to burn a cloth, to create fire, and suddenly those harmful, like harmless rays, you know, if put together, can be harmful. That is the power of concentration. That the energy that is dissipated over there can be concentrated and can be utilized for something greater. This is what our sages says is the basic principle of meditation. Your mind has been given to you, but what is the mind doing? The mind is the cause of suffering through its movement. If you are sitting here, someone will tell you that there's a robbery in your house. That is the start of suffering. Why? Because till you are here, you are not thinking about your house. You are not thinking about your valuable things. But the moment someone injects a thought in you that, oh, your house is being robbed right now, automatically you will forget this program. All your worries will be to your precious commodity. Someone will think, oh my God, all the men will think about their electronics and their cars. All the women will think about their clothes and their jewelry. All the kids will think about their toy, whatever is valuable to them. And they will think, oh my God, if this thing has gone, then what will I do? That's the start of your insecurity, your fear. But you are physically present here. Why are you suffering here? There is nothing wrong with you. We are sitting in a hall. The weather is pleasant outside. There is no physical discomfort here. But because of the movement of the mind in not the present is the cause of our suffering. And if someone tells you that do not worry, the burglar was caught and he was arrested, nothing is stolen in your house, immediately your mind will come back here because it is not floating there. And immediately when it's here at this moment, then there is no suffering. So our sages very beautifully put it, use the technique of the masters, use the meditation techniques in your life to focus your energy, your mind into what? Into yourself. What is the basic existence of ourself? Is our breath. If I'm breathing, I'm alive. You know, I have 500 friends on Facebook. I can reply to them. But if I stop breathing, then my 500 friends on Facebook still exist. Facebook still exists. But sadly, the user, the person who has the password to the account does not exist. So your existence is fundamentally based on not if the world is good or bad, or the time is good or bad, or what community you belong to, what religion you belong to, whether you believe in God or you do not believe in God. Your basic existence is that you are breathing. And because you are breathing, this miracle of life, this miracle of consciousness is a possibility within you. The moment you stop breathing, all those possibilities cease to be. So understanding your breath is also a goal of life. I mean, where to put these energies into yourself. A simpler way of explaining it to you. I can take you to one of the, you have the Tate Modern Art Gallery. And if you go there, sometimes I went there ages ago, but just to see expression of art is also a very beautiful thing, to see what people think about and what they express. Now, there would be a room where we have paintings which are worth millions of pounds. And I take you in front of those paintings and I say, okay, tell me what is the most important aspect of a painting? So someone will say the artist. Because if the artist was not there, then the painting will not exist. For sure. Very good. But some people would say, oh, if the artist was there, but he didn't have any talent, then what would the artist paint? Then the talent is what makes the painting a £1,000,000 painting. That is also very logical. You move a little further, someone will say that no, okay, the talent is there, the artist is there, but if the means to paint is not there, if there are no colors, someone didn't make the colors and the paintbrush, then how will the artist paint? Now, each person is looking at the problem with his own understanding, and there is nothing right or wrong about it. Everyone is correct in its own sphere of understanding. But if I tell you a very simple thing that we do not think about, because we are thinking about the artist, we are thinking about the colors, we are thinking about the talent. But the basic thing is that even if you have all these three things, what do you need for the painting to exist? The most important thing that you need is a blank canvas. Because you have the talent, you have the painting, you have the colors, you have the paintbrush, you even have, probably you'll be Van Gogh's reincarnated soul, so you have the talent, you are also present there. But besides having all this, if the simple means of your expression is not there, if the blank canvas is not there, then what happened? The painter cannot paint, even if he has the paint. So a very important aspect is hidden in the background, is the blank canvas. Now if I tell you that because the blank canvas is the most important aspect of the painting, buy this blank canvas for $1 million or £1,000,000. Will you buy a blank canvas for £1,000,000? No. You will disregard it. This is the entrapment of the mind. Even in ourselves, what do we value most? Someone values their hair, they are going slowly, slowly. Someone values their eyesight, I can see very well. That is also fading away. Every aspect of your body that you value the most, sadly to say, the truth is they are fading away. And what the most valuable aspect which controls everything, the breath, we disregard all our life. We don't value it. Someone will do, I don't know how many treatments, spend thousands of dollars just to have hair replanted, but to lose it all again. When it's going, it's going. In the same way, we can replace our knees, but we cannot change it. We cannot change the suffering that we will experience. For 5 years, 10 years, we might have some sort of relief, but at the end of the day, life will move back. The body is decaying because body is invaluable. The body will change, the body will fade away. What is the most valuable thing which is making the body tick? And what is making our life or our body tick is the grace of God, is the vibration within us. We inhale and we exhale. That is the primordial vibration inside of us. And like our sages said, that what is in the microcosm is also in the macrocosm. You understand the mystery of your breath, you will understand the mystery of the universe. And the greatest mystery of the universe is God, so to speak. Even science today is trying to disprove it, but the more the science is trying to disprove God through scientific methods, the more scientists firmly are believing, no, there is something that they have, completely chosen to ignore. When the God particle was discovered, there was a very good debate in India where they brought heads of different religious institutions and also head of religious scientific institution. So they were all sitting and they were talking. So there was a person who was there from the Swami Vivekanand Mutt. And he was the senior most person there, and he came and he said, I am here only because as a man of science, before I came to the Mutt, before I became a spiritual person, as a man of science, I was a theoretical physicist. So the news presenter started asking him that if you are a theoretical physicist, how did you become a man of God? So he's like, the more I studied, the intricacies of physics, the more I begin to understand our scriptures. Our scriptures are not saying different things. Law of karma is what? Our sages simply put, jo boge, wo kaatoge. Our sages simply put it, that what you shall show, you shall reap. It is a very simple principle. Science comes and says that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That fundamental principle of science is the law of karma. Now, if you have the vision to put two and two together, the two streams of exploration are not speaking different things. They are saying exactly the same thing. That whatever action that you have, whatever intent that you put into the universe, whatever action or feeling that you put forth into the universe, it will be reciprocated. So if I have negative feeling towards the world, towards the individual, the universe will have a negative feeling towards me. And that is explained through science, through force. That if you punch a wall, the wall punches you back, that's why you get hurt. In the same way, there is resistance there. So science explained it in different terms. Our scientists, our spiritual scientists explained it in different terms. So the understanding stems from your consciousness. But to understanding your consciousness, that is our goal. That is the effort. That is the push that we all have to put in ourselves. And that is the little push that getting up every morning and before we face the world, face yourself. Sit in meditation. Understand yourself. Why is the mind so restless? Why does the mind wander? Why does the mind realize the importance of the present when the present is all we have? Our sages very simply put it. All your insecurities, your fear is your imagination. How is it your imagination? You met someone a year ago, he said something to you, you were very angry with him. Now a year has passed. The person must have changed, as an individual growing up. He must be more sensible in what he's speaking to other people, more in check. But what has been unchecked is your feeling towards that person. Because if for a year you're constantly thinking, oh, that person is a bad person, that person is a bad person, you are creating an image of that person. The image of that person may not be correlated to the person he is today. But because you haven't let go of a particular image, that image haunts you. Someone will say, oh, this person is coming. You will say, oh, I don't want to meet him. And this is what excess baggage we all carry. All our regrets, what we have not done in our life, you have the opportunity to do it right now. You want to travel the world? What is stopping you right now? If you want to come to India, what is stopping you right now? You can book a ticket. There are multiple flights going out from here and you can come to India. But what stops you is the fear, is an image that you've created. If we go to India, something will happen. Something will happen in the bathroom also if it has to happen. If the time is there to go, you will go at your home only. So many people die at home. They go to sleep at night thinking they'll get up in the morning and fulfill their dreams. And there is no morning. There's not even a time to go to the hospital where the doctor can tell you what is wrong with you. So many people just leave. So what is in the past is only a memory, an imagination that we are reinforcing again and again through the power of the mind. What is the future is again your imagination. So our sages say, what is the truth? The truth is here and now, what you are experiencing here and now. But because the mind is wandering, the mind is again and again thinking about what is gone and what is to come. We are missing out in the most beautiful opportunity to experience love, to care, to share, to feel compassion, which we can all do right now. And that's what happens. Sometimes when we go to certain places, we have profound experiences. Why? Because the beauty of that place or the experience of that place brings you in the now. It doesn't take you away from it. Many people go and climb mountains. Why are they doing it? To experience the moment. Because the moment sets the mind free. You are so awed at certain beauty that you are not thinking about when do I have to go back to London or what do I have to do. It's like, when everyone tries to sit in meditation, we all try to put an alarm clock. That from 7 to 7:30 I have time for meditation. I've taken out this time in my busy schedule. But 7 o'clock when I sit in meditation, I put the alarm and I sit and I close my eyes. I'm only meditating about when the alarm is going to go off. That is not meditation of God, that is meditation of the alarm clock. That is meditation of time. And if you are meditating on time, time will always escape you because time always passes. It is not permanent. That is why if you're only meditating about the time, you're only thinking about when that half an hour will pass. That is not meditation. That is the mind again wandering off and moving away from the present. But sometimes what happens is that for a moment you will have a profound experience where this chase of the mind fades away and the mind actually becomes in the present. That is why a person has a profound experience and he's speechless, he doesn't know how to explain it to people. That is when you're meditating. When the mind is not traveling, the mind is not being influenced by thought, by the pull of the world, by your desires, by what you have to do tomorrow, and it is just here. And it happens to all of us. You go to a very scenic place, you're awed by it, you don't know what to say, what to think. You just keep on looking at a beautiful sunrise because it brings you in that moment. Though the sunrise will finish, it will travel, and then again the world's pull will come back. You go for a holiday, you go to a beautiful place, you switch off your phone. See how comfortable your life will be if your phone is off, But obviously, work calls us back, things call us back, and we knew when the holiday has to end, we have to switch on our phone. And the worries of the phone will come back, So this is what we need today. We have created an artificial world around us, and that living in that artificial world is the cause of our suffering. If we can change that, if we can transform that through the power that God has already given us, through the power of our consciousness, through the power of the mind, but understanding where to utilize it. Put it within yourself, put it within your breath. That is the objective of dhyan. Dhey mein apne man ko lagana dhyan, lagane wala dhyata. Dhey is your essence of your breath that is going in and coming out. Because without that, there is no life. But when you focus your mind's energy through yogic techniques, through meditations, through the simple act of breathing, forget yogic techniques and meditation. Just breathe and focus on your breath. Automatically, there is an escape from this artificial reality that we've created. And then the real self surfaces. Now, there are a lot of barriers for the real selves to permanently be there. And those barriers are also being said. What stops us from knowing ourselves is ourselves. Because we have created, these versions of ourselves. I'm an angry person. I'm a very proud person. I'm a very arrogant person. I'm a very ignorant person. And those are the barriers that have to slowly dissolve. And for that, the simple principle of detachment has to be understood. Now, many people think that possessing something is actually being attached to it. There's a miscommon understanding. You can possess 10 things in the world, but attachment is only when you think about them. You have a car, you utilize it as a car, you go to office every day, you sit in it, you travel, you come back. There is no attachment. But when you go someplace where you do not have the car, at one point there were no cars, people used to walk. Something very difficult happened in Nepal, and I had the opportunity to reach there. So due to certain agitation, the borders of Nepal got shut. When the borders of Nepal got shut, for 6 months there was no petrol. People were getting petrol, but in very difficult circumstances. So people were walking. So when I went for the Mahashivratri program to Pashupatinath, and when we went there, I met some of my friends. So I looked at them and they were like, you don't understand how difficult our life was. So I was looking at them and I was like, how difficult your life was? He's like, for 6 months, we walked 7 kilometers to our office every day. So I said, why you are complaining? You would be fit by now, Anyways, people complain that they don't have time to, exercise and be fit, and you're walking 7 kilometers, 14 kilometers a day. He's like, you do it. He's like, you do it. You do it for even 1 month. Now, we are so used to being dependent on certain facilities that we have, and we take them for granted. But what if your life moves in a certain direction, that all those things that you take for granted are suddenly taken away from you? And this is eventually going to happen. One day, our fossil fuel supply will end. And if we do not have an alternate technology, then you might have the best car in the world, but if you do not have the fuel to drive it, the car is pointless. What would you do with the best car in the world if you cannot drive it? And that is slowly what's happening to the world. Whether we realize it now, whether we realize it when it actually happens, but this realization, one way or the other, will set in. So, the thing is, we are so used to living in this comfort zone of ours that we do not know that there is a life beyond our comfort zone, greater and more pleasing than that. But because we resist change, we cannot change. And the moment you put yourself outside the comfort box, one day you say, okay, I'll walk to office, let's see. Though it's hesitant, a lot of mind, objections will come, oh, it's so far, how will you do it? But the day you do it, you will know you are free from the bindings or the attachment of the car. Because you know if tomorrow there is no fuel, life will still continue. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes in order to change or to understand change, one has to do what one thinks it's not possible. When you sit in meditation, many people, even just before they thought about meditation, they convince themselves that it is not for them, that it won't happen, that it is very difficult. It cannot happen without the Guru's grace. It cannot happen without the God's grace. God's grace is that we are alive and breathing today. What more can be God's grace? I mean, God has created this world for us in which life is possible. Like I was saying, in this infinite universe, we have one planet where life exists. It does not exist in Mars, it does not exist in Moon, it doesn't probably could be existing in other solar system that we do not know about. But the fact is that in our solar system, in this vastness of space, we are the only people here. Isn't that grace? I mean, aren't we as beings so blessed that our planet can sustain life? And we are here, we are living, we are exchanging our experiences. But if we do it with ignorance, then what are we doing? We are fighting wars, we are creating guns, we are polluting our rivers, we are polluting our atmosphere. And if, like, the world's fear is what? That one day we'll have a nuclear war and the whole world will end because, each country has so much of nuclear arsenal that they can destroy the world 10 times over, not once, 10 times over. And these are just few countries, So the weapons that we've made, if you put all the weapons together, we could probably destroy this world more than 100 times or 1,000 times, But that is the end of us. It is not the end of the world or end of life. Because scientists have now found out that even if we have a nuclear war, and human life comes to an end, cockroaches will still live. It will be their age, and they'll probably, thank mankind that they destroyed the world so that their civilizations could flourish. So at the end of the day, life as we know it will come to an end, but life does not come to an end. Life as we know it will come to an end. Life will affect us. Our daily struggles in life will get greater. But if there is a balance within your understanding, if there is wisdom within our understanding, if we put our duties to the world and our spiritual duties together, then there is a balanced growth. This is not an imbalanced growth. We can change the world. Why not? We have been changing the world. We have given amazing technologies to the world. We've eradicated, great diseases from this world. We've come together for each and everyone's aid when any calamity strikes in any corner of the world. This is the power of human spirit. The power to change for the better. But if you do not understand the power within you, then what? This life is a wasted life. We've come, we've fought, and we've gone. Now this man has done since time immemorial. We've been fighting, we've been struggling, we've been taking things that do not belong to us. But this is not the goal of life. So it is, we are truly fortunate in so many ways that God sends us His blessings from time to time. We have certain experiences from time to time. We meet certain people from time to time that just push us in the right direction. They show us that, okay, you are doing this. Maybe this will enhance your life a little way. And if you make that change, if you make that leap of faith, then your own spirit becomes essentially your guide. And that is what our scripture says is the Adi Guru. When we talk about Lord Shiva, we call him the Adi Guru, the first teacher of meditation, the first yogi, the primordial being. What are we saying? Now, if Shiva was the first primordial being, he must have also done something to understand the mysteries of the world. If he is the first guru, there is no guru before him, na? I mean, the first means that there is nothing before him. So if Shiva was the first guru, if he was the primordial being, who taught him these mysteries of life? He taught it himself. That's why he is the first. So if the primordial guru can teach himself by his understanding. What is stopping you in your life in teaching yourselves the mysteries of what you are? You just have to focus it. And that's when the Adi Guru inside of you helps you. That conscious spirit inside of you helps you and it guides you. But that surrender has to happen. Jalauddin Rumi, who was probably one of the most famous Sufi saints in the world, was a great poet also, he wrote a very beautiful thing. He said that what you are seeking is also seeking you. Means we are seeking God and that cosmos is also seeking us. It wants to be a part of us. How? You have a profound experience. Don't you share it with your loved ones? Something like you probably have won the next national lottery. The first one you're going to call is your loved ones. You're going to call your parents, you're going to call your friends, and you're going to share that happiness with you. Isn't that as a basic human drive? I mean, anything that we do, any profound experience, you get 90% in your school exams. Automatically, the child will call his parents to share that happiness that I have accomplished this. So in the same way, if out of love, you share your beautiful experiences, this whole creation is sustaining on that principle of love. Why has God created this universe? If it's not out of love, it is not out of hate and destruction. Because if it was out of hate and destruction, then the world itself would not exist. If God wants to destroy the world, God just has to blink and then the world is over. One chemical composition in the air could change and this atmosphere could be unbreathable for us and life would, totally change in a moment. But God has worked on infinite principles. I was speaking to a doctor in America and he was telling me, he's like, it's incredible just to see the human body. He was a cardiologist and he was just saying it's incredible. He's like, we are so proud that we have made so many super highways in this world, like especially in America. You can reach from one place to the other in this much time because the highway is there. He's like, we don't understand that how the Creator has laid this same map within our body. Your organs are connected by nerves. And each nerve is like a highway into your system. And there's like thousands and thousands of kilometers of these nerves and these vessels running inside you. Now, if you're very proud that man is the architect of roads and these grids around this world which can take you from one place to the other. We put on our GPS and they take the shortest route possible to your destination. It's a grid. You navigate the grid, you take the shortest distance. And a man is very proud that, we made this thing. So there is a greater architect of the human body also. I mean, we haven't planned our human body. We haven't planned anything in it. We don't get up in the morning and tell our heart, okay, start beating, it's time to go to work. All these processes are happening. We go to sleep. We are not even conscious of our own consciousness. Sometimes we go into deep sleep, but you are breathing. Your heart is functioning. Your livers is functioning. Your kidneys are functioning. It is creating all the impurities that we take, make our blood pure, excrete all what is not required from, all these processes are automatically happening. So there has to be an architect behind this invention called the human body. And this invention filled with miracles, thousands and thousands kilometers or miles of blood vessels are functioning. If even one artery is blocked, the doctor will say, you might have a cardiac arrest. That this blockage will lead to your health problems. Who is taking care of this system? That is the question. So one must understand that we are conscious beings, we are beings of the spirit. And to understand our spirituality is also a goal in life. I'm not saying it's the only goal that you give up on your worldly lives, come to India, because that also will create an imbalance. If we anyways have a population crisis, if everyone comes to India to find themselves, I don't think India can exist, And the fact is, why do you have to come to India to find yourself? If you lost yourself in the UK, you'll probably find yourself in the UK. You're not going to find it in India. But so many people that come to India with this hope that, we'll have some profound experience and we'll find God in India. But God is present everywhere. See, that is the change from being a religious person to being a spiritual person. That you will understand that universality of principle is existing everywhere. So my journey starts from within me. That's what Gautam Buddha said. He said, in the end, when your goal is attained and your destination reached, you will only find that you have traveled from yourself to yourself and nothing more. So thank you all for your presence. Thank you all for being here.